3139.
You're listening to The Alex Jones Show. From his Central Texas Command Center, deep behind enemy lines, the information war continues. It's Alex Jones and the GCN Radio Network.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. Now I want to continue on this idea of posse comitatus a little bit longer. We're going to play a report from Joe Biggs talking about how Fox News spun our reporting of this in the next segment. But in this segment, I want to continue on with this posse comitatus because it is all connected. The whole idea that you're going to have, that we're endangered by a standing army. Understand that when Madison and the other founders of this country created the Constitution, they did not envision a permanent standing army. What they envisioned was an officer corps of the Army and a permanent Navy. Of course, they didn't have an Air Force at that time. The Air Force could also be permanent. But they did not envision a permanent standing military. They knew that historically that had always been used to oppress the people. They explicitly talked about the Roman Empire. So the Roman Empire, you don't need to have an army unless you're going to project power like an empire, unless you're going to invade other countries. If you're going to defend invaders, if you're going to be like Switzerland, for example, what you're best served by is an armed citizenry. Switzerland was the only country that was not invaded. Why? Because they followed the model that the American founders set up. We did not follow that model. We don't follow that model anymore. But we used to. We used to have a militia that would respond to invasion and defend their land. But they're not going to get the Swiss people to go abroad and take over other countries. And that's why they create an army. And of course, if you go back to World War II, my family is watching a series that we'd never seen when it first came out, Band of Brothers. I know most people have seen it by now. We didn't. We don't watch that much television. So we're going through and looking at World War II. And, you know, the people there, they were adamant that they wanted to sign up. They saw their country as having been attacked. They wanted to defend it. That was the mindset of the people. And so you had a massive citizen army under a corps of officers that were there that were permanent. They realized with Vietnam that they could not rely on a draft or the citizens to fulfill their vision of empire. And so they went to a professional army. Now, the problem is that with a professional army, you have people who are going to be far more susceptible to political considerations, who are going to be looking at their career. And they're not going to be coming at it from the standpoint of just merely protecting their country. And we could look at this and we could say, well, you know, this whole idea of not having massive police forces, just having a very, very tiny police force that calls upon the community if there's something major that they need assistance for, as we saw in America, in the West, the posse. To say that we could go with that, or to say that we could go with a militia that would be called up under an officer corps, people will say, well, that's an anachronism. We can't really have that anymore because that's just, we don't, we have, it's a different world. It's a modern world. Nobody said to the founders at the time they were talking about the dangers of a standing army, nobody said to them, well, you know, yeah, that happened with the Roman people, but, you know, today we've got muskets. You know, this is much more dangerous than it was at the time of the Roman Empire. Look, the technology changes, but human nature does not change. That's why their understanding of human nature, their understanding of history, their understanding of how people behave when they get power, that was why they set up a system of checks and balances. And one of those checks and balances was not to have a permanent standing army. And we're seeing those kinds of abuses as we look at these exercises that are being done within America to take away civilians. You got to ask yourself, when they want to move around, when their stated purpose is to move around in American cities with Operation Jade Helm, or Jade Helm exercise, I guess they call it. When their stated objective is to move around in America and not be detected by Americans, do you see a problem with that? I see a big problem with that. I don't think that's a legitimate thing for our government to be doing. And as we're looking at this film footage from Fort Lauderdale, where they did their unannounced exercise last night, we see people being herded up into white vans and driven off. Is that what we want in our country? I don't want that in our country. We need to understand that when the technology changes, it only makes people it only exacerbates the evil human nature, the evil aspects of power. We need to understand that with DARPA's powerful technology, they are concentrating power into the hands of a few people. That's what's so dangerous about these special forces operations. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with Joe Biggs' report.
Introducing Secret 12, the new InfoWars Life vitamin B12 formulation. Secret 12 is a binary of nutramedical grade, bioavailable coenzyme forms of B12, methylcobalamin, the same kind used in B12 injections, and adenosylcobalamin. Secret 12 is simply taken by mouth, right on the tongue, and then swallowed. No needles, no injections. Secure your revolutionary Secret 12 formula right now at InfoWarsLife.com or call 888-253-3139.
The government's Department of Homeland Security is buying up loads of ammo. At the same time, they're restricting civilians' rights to own and purchase firearms. Can you put two and two together? Infidel Body Armor can stop every round, including hollow points and .308 sniper rounds, is reasonably priced and fully legal. But for how long? Go to InfidelBodyArmor.com, spelled I-N-F-I-D-E-L, bodyarmor.com. Infidel Body Armor. Just won't quit.
With your friends.
KLN, Los Angeles. Clone Radio. We play the songs that sound more like everyone else than anyone else. Clone.
Hitler took the guns. Stalin took the guns. Mao took the guns. Fidel Castro took the guns. Hugo Chavez took the guns. 1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms. The Republic will rise again when you attempt to take our guns.
I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man.
The answer to 1984 is 1776. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show.
Welcome back to The Alex Jones Show. And today we've been talking about this drill in Fort Lauderdale. Of course, the last week we've been talking about Operation Jade Helm, or the Jade Helm exercise, the unclassified document that went viral when we reported on it, talking about a massive military exercise over a couple of months. It's going to be taking place in the Southwest, with Texas and Utah being marked as hostile, marked as red, and of course the friendly states are marked in blue. Isn't that interesting? Places like, California and Colorado, states that are in the Democrat column. And of course, we have seen over the last several years a lot of military drills inside urban cities, and that's something we should all be very concerned about. Typically, they're not announced, just as this one that we were showing in the last hour in Fort Lauderdale was not announced. And if you haven't seen this, go back and take a look at the video. The news article is on Infowars.com. Video shows troops training to intern citizens in Fort Lauderdale. A very disturbing video to me, because I've seen them training for this on multiple occasions. I've seen the scenarios. I understand what this is. This is a psyop against the American people, but they're also training for martial law in the United States. We have to be concerned, especially when we see the special forces practicing flying into an area, grabbing some people and flying out in 15 minutes, or when they've got civilians being marched around as role players inside a city and then being loaded up into buses. How many times are they going to do that, and people get used to seeing that, and then when they do it for real, they don't realize it's for real, because we have the NDAA. They can detain people indefinitely, the military can, without due process, and of course transport them somewhere else where they can be tortured. We all know that that happens with our government, and so we should be very concerned about this. And when I was looking at the comments on the Daily Mail, which did a balanced report of this, these are some of the comments. One of the persons said, the U.S. military wants to know if American soldiers can remain undetected while operating among other Americans. What's wrong with this explanation? Yeah, there is something very wrong with that. When the American government is operating on that, we have special forces who are operating in unconventional warfare, which they admit is a psychological operation. As we broke this, Joe Biggs got an email from a friend of his that he had fought with in Afghanistan or Iraq that said, shut up, you're going to ruin the PSYOP. It is a PSYOP. That's what unconventional warfare is. They're trying to train, equip, and advise locals who are going to be with them on regime change. That's what's wrong with this whole thing. A lot of people will say, well, you know, we need the military and we need to have protection of our borders because we've got these dangerous drug cartels, and 100,000 people have been killed in Mexico over the drug wars that we helped to create with our drug prohibition issues. But of course, these dangerous drug cartels could come in and start doing that in the United States, so we need to have the military trained for that. That is not what they're training for. When they go in, as you can see in this video, they are training for extraction of people. They're training to get people on the red list, people on the blue list. You should be very concerned about the fact that, as I was mentioning the standing army, they understand that if they've got a large army, there are going to be people who are not happy with what they're doing, people whose loyalty doesn't lie to the institution but lies to their country, people whose loyalty is to their homeland, not to the government necessarily. And when the government comes after people in their homeland unjustified, they will stand back. They won't do that. That's why it's dangerous. I don't want to see people conscripted into the army. But I'm saying is that that's one of the reasons why they go to a permanent professional army, is so they get people that they can put a different level, a different kind of pressure on. And of course, that army continues to shrink down. Donald Rumsfeld wanted a smaller army when they went to Afghanistan and Iraq. They wanted to use special forces with high-tech weapons. It wasn't very effective. They eventually did the troop surge, but that's the goal. And let me tell you, if you look at these nightmare weapons that DARPA is creating, many of which you don't know about. Some of them they let us know about, but they're far beyond that. There's a lot of secret stuff that they have that you don't know anything about. When you combine that with special forces, it is truly, truly an awesome military and something that is totally out of our control. This is a black ops military that's being created. These are the boots on the ground for the CIA and the NSA, for the secret surveillance state, where we can't know anything that they're doing. That's the way these people operate. We should be very afraid of a government like that. Let's play this clip from, it was about 2 years ago, I think, when, 2013, we did this report. Let's play this where they're talking in L.A. about why they trained in urban areas.
Special Military Operation Forces, in conjunction with the LAPD, conducting some military maneuvers that had many people wondering what is going on.
A Black Hawk helicopter and 4 OH-6s, or Little Birds, flew over the city. Duran says the military picks environments based on what they might be facing in the near future.
If it's a mountainous terrain, then they go to mountains. If it's a desert terrain, they use the desert.
Also, what we saw here tonight in downtown Los Angeles has been seen in Miami and in Boston.
Yeah, that's right.
Did you notice what he said?
Let's hold it right there. You heard what the guy from the military said. We're going to train to fight, and we're going to train to fight in the mountains if we're going to be fighting in the mountains, or in the desert. We're going to train in the desert. So they're fighting not just an urban environment. They're fighting in an American urban environment. That's a very important distinction to understand there. And when they push back on this, what they originally came back and said their denials were, well, I don't really know what InfoWars is talking about. They wouldn't talk about us by name, because they didn't want people to go to our site to see the evidence that we had. They don't want people to come to our site to see that these scenarios have been developing over many years, to see the multiple clips, the multiple links to their own documents that show what they're training for. So they don't mention our name, just like Fox News doesn't mention our name. But it's out there. They understand they're losing the information war because Drudge will link to these types of things. And one of the things that they were talking about a year ago, remember there was that meeting that they had in the Pentagon? They said, why are we losing the information war? Here's what one lady got up and said there.
I don't think the American people actually trust us to deliver accurate information. How are we, what's the plan to change that in the way ahead? Because to continue the way we have, to continue to put that positive spin, it feels like we're losing a lot of our audience because they're not listening. Because we keep saying the same thing over, everything is okay,
this is at the military at the Pentagon.
Or with the sexual assault issues that we've been experiencing in the Air Force. So how do we change that culture from that PAO up? Because a lot of times, speaking from my perspective, and I can only speak from my perspective and a junior enlisted perspective, the younger generations get it, that we have to start being honest and forthright. And it's difficult to convey those ideas and convince the chain of command to necessarily follow those or to be ready to put that first foot forward before someone else leaks our story.
You can see the Pentagon guy just getting a really bad case of heartburn. Keep playing this.
As it is.